evening, viewers. Thanks for joining on this Wednesday's edition of the Regional News. We start with news coming out of Trinidad and Tobago. Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley said the government has spent $80 million to install 2,500 CCTV cameras across the country to give the TNT Police Service an extra boost in the fight against criminal element. Speaking at the People's National Movement (PNM) meeting in Chaguanas last night, the Prime Minister said during a meeting with the TNT Police Service divisional heads on Monday, the issue of lack of CCTV cameras was highlighted. Rowley, as head of the National Security Council, met with the divisional heads at the Diplomatic Center in St. Hans amid the rising crime surge in the country. Prime Minister Rowley said when asked the senior officers what the government could do to assist in the crime-fighting efforts, several of the heads said CCTV cameras would allow the TNT Police Service to identify criminals. Rowley said the government was able to tell them that they are on track because the government has spent $80 million to provide 2,500 cameras at various locations across the country, and they are being installed. In fact, he said the government intends to install even more CCTV cameras in coming months. We now look at news from Venezuela. The presidents of Colombia and Venezuela held their first bilateral meeting in the Venezuelan capital Caracas on Tuesday, where they discussed topics including trade, human rights, and protecting the Amazon rainforest. The neighbors' fraught relationship has improved since Colombian President Gustavo Petro took office in August on promises to fully restart trade with Venezuela. The countries reopened a major crossing point to cargo transport in late September and have each named ambassadors. The two leaders discussed economic and trade relations, Nicolas Maduro said, including strengthening cooperation. They also discussed Venezuela's return to the Andean community, which includes Colombia, Peru, Ecuador, and Bolivia. Venezuela's rejoining the Andean community would be good news for South America, Maduro said. Colombia's leader also urged Venezuela to reintegrate itself into the Inter-American human rights system. Advocacy group Human Rights Watch recently called on Colombia to use its restored diplomatic relations with Venezuela to help curb human rights violations there. We close with a story out of Brazil. Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro on Tuesday did not concede defeat in his first public remarks since losing Sunday's election, saying protests by his supporters were the fruit of indignation and a sense of injustice over the vote. However, he stopped short of contesting the election result and authorized his chief of staff to begin the transition process with representative of the leftist president-elect Luiz Lula da Silva. It took Bolsonaro, a right-wing nationalist, more than 44 hours to comment after the election was decided by electoral authorities, with the delay raising fears he would seek to cast doubt on the narrow result. Amid his silence, supporters blocked highways to protest his defeat, with some calling for a military coup to stop former President Lula from returning to power. The highway blockades have disrupted fuel distribution, supermarket supplies, and the flow of grain exports to major ports, according to industry groups. In his brief national address, Bolsonaro joked that journalists would miss him, thanked those who voted for him, and said he would abide with the Constitution, which stipulates a transition of power on January 1st. That's all for tonight's regional news. Bye for now.